Independent video games were once a thing of rarity. It is only over the past 4 or 5 years that the indie scene has seen a massive boom. Back in the early 2000s, video games were going further into a more realistic direction, and the games of the 90s were a thing of the past. There were, however, a few small groups of people out there who didn't want the games of old to die. Video games where fun was put first, and realism second. One such group was a small Russian developer by the name of Sigma Team. Today, we are going to take a look at the game that brought their name into the spotlight. Alien Shooter is an isometric top-down shooter developed and published by Sigma Team, and released September 14th, 2013 for PC. It has since been remade for mobile devices and became available for Android and iOS in 2013, and later ported to the PlayStation Vita. It also got a release on Steam and in 2011 on GOG.com, including both its expansions, for free. The story for Alien Shooter is exactly what you would expect from a game in the 90s. There's a story there, but it is only there because it has to be. Very similar to the likes of Doom or Quake. The plot isn't something that is focused on, nor is it intended to be. You take on the role of a hired mercenary sent to an underground laboratory after contact was lost and several military assaults failed. Upon investigating, you find that the complex has been overrun with aliens. Eventually, you find that the cause for the invasion is due to teleportation experiments. That sounds familiar, doesn't it? Anyway, to put a stop to the invasion, you must kill all the aliens and destroy all the teleports within the facility. As you descend deeper into the facility, however, you are met with larger and stronger groups of aliens. Don't worry though. There is more than enough firepower to help you on your way. There are two different characters to choose from when starting Alien Shooter, a male character and a female character. Each has their own stats that give them both a strength and weakness. The male character is stronger, allowing for larger amounts of ammunition to be carried along with having more health. The female character is faster moving and dishes out a bit more damage, while not having the strength or health of that of the male character. The primary focus of Alien Shooter is of course the action. You must fight your way through a total of 10 levels with increasing difficulty with each one. Each level has an objective that must be completed in order to progress to the next. Objectives include destroying teleports, killing all the aliens, or closing entry points to stop the aliens getting onto that floor with dynamite. As you progress through the levels, you will be met with larger and stronger groups of aliens. To begin with, you will only face off against some of the weaker aliens that can only harm you by getting up close. Later, however, you will come across more dangerous foes with the capability of attacking you from a distance, while also taking a lot more punishment. Each alien type comes in 4 different colours, each depicting how tough they are. The variations start with green, that are the weakest, to yellow, to red, and finally blue. The blue variation of each alien type is a boss, and this is a once-off encounter, but expect a far longer fight against them than their weaker counterparts. On your journey you will find money which can be used to purchase new weapons, ammunition, armour and implants that increase your stats, such as overall health, movement speed, ammunition limit, and the damage each weapon deals. There is also a small chance of enemies dropping extra lives, mega health that can boost your health over 100 its maximum, and a short-term invulnerability power. Enemies also drop health pickups and ammunition. There are also secrets to be found in levels which can be found through looking for cracks in the walls. Shooting cracked walls causes it to break, revealing a hidden cache of supplies. On certain levels you will come across turrets which will help you kill large amounts of enemies with relative ease. The gameplay to Alien Shooter is nothing more than mindless over-the-top action. Compared to today's standards it may seem repetitive, and you'd be right on saying so. Video games of the 90s were quite repetitive due to their technological limitations. Alien Shooter, however, was aimed at being more of a game from the 90s, therefore its repetition does show. The inclusion of stat upgrades and the ability to buy new equipment is a welcoming one that brings a modern mechanic to an old-style gameplay. It gives the game a bit more depth to it than just mindless shooting. While the game is rather repetitive, it's repetition that has never quite been so much fun. The real stars of Alien Shooter are not either the characters but rather the weapons the game has at your disposal. The first weapon you will use is dual pistols. They are relatively weak but are capable of killing weaker enemies easily. They also have unlimited ammunition, making them useful should you somehow run out of ammunition. Next up is always a favourite, the shotgun. In It is a devastating weapon up close and can easily take out any weak to medium difficult enemies. The grenade launcher is the third weapon you'll get your hands on. It is a rather underwhelming weapon to use, but it gets the job done when dealing with larger groups of weaker enemies. The minigun is where the weapons really start to get interesting. Its rapid rate of fire can mow through large groups of enemies like a hot knife through butter. It is capable of also taking on some larger groups of tougher enemies without too much hassle. For when the grenade launcher doesn't dish out enough explosive damage, the rocket launcher is exactly the weapon you will need. The rocket launcher has a relatively large splash damage and can take out weaker to medium difficult enemies with ease. The freeze gun does exactly as the name suggests. It freezes aliens, turning them into ice sculptures that you can break into a million tiny shards. It is effective against weaker to medium enemies, but against larger and tougher ones it has a much harder time freezing them. The plasma gun is a highly destructive weapon capable of destroying all but the toughest of enemies. Due to its high damage, however, it has an extremely slow rate of fire in comparison to the other weapons available. It is the perfect weapon for turning large groups of weak to medium enemies into chunky little pieces. You can't have an alien game without a flamethrower now, can you? The flamethrower is an extremely powerful weapon capable of destroying the toughest of enemies with little effort. Its fast rate of fire along with high damage, however, is countered by its huge ammo consumption and its short range. The ultimate and most powerful weapon that Alien Shooter has to offer is the Magma minigun, an experimental weapon of the Magma Corporation. It has a rapid rate of fire, huge range, and massive damage capable of destroying anything that stands in its path. All the weapons in Alien Shooter are well balanced with the exception of the Magma minigun, which is personally overpowered, but I feel that is intentional. They're all fun to use, and quite frankly, when destroying tons of enemies, balance really doesn't come into the equation. The game is about the perfect length to stop any of the weapons becoming boring to use. There are a total of 5 different alien species to be found in the original game. The first is the critters, which are a small alien that attack by biting you. They are the weakest of the enemies and easily dispatched using even the weakest of weapons in the game. They are really nothing more than little ankle biters. The same cannot be said for the Xenos, however. Their influence and inspiration are quite obvious, and they are not far from being as dangerous as that of what they inspire from. They are fast moving and capable of dealing moderate damage. A few well-placed shotgun blasts will put them down, but facing against a group of them makes that not such an easy feat. The spiders are exactly as their name suggests. They look and act just like spiders and are extremely fast moving. They also have the ability to spit acid at you, which leaves a pool when it strikes the floor. Step into the pool of acid and your health will rapidly begin to decrease. They're not particularly tough, but in large groups their acid makes them extremely dangerous. Modified Xenos is a modified version of the standard. They are much tougher to kill, along with being equipped with weapons. The weapons allow them to attack from a distance, dealing decent amounts of damage, particularly without armour equipped. Before being able to deal damage to the creature itself, you must first destroy its weaponry, making them quite hardy. In groups they can pose a real threat to those unprepared. Rhinos are the toughest and most dangerous of all the aliens to be found in the base game. Not only do they take huge amounts of punishment, but they are equipped with huge Gatling guns, and the tougher variations with Gatling guns and rockets. Like the modified Xenos, before they can even be hurt, you must first destroy their weapon. Only those who are best equipped will be able to take on these monstrosities. While the enemies of Alien Shooter are not that imaginative, they do exactly the job they are intended to. That job is to be cannon fodder for the player to destroy in large masses. Each type of alien offers a balanced ramp up in difficulty. They are not a pushover, nor are they too difficult for the weapons you have when they first appear. While their variation is limited, it is more than enough for the length of the game. In addition to the campaign, there is also a survival mode. The idea is to survive as long as you can, killing as many aliens and scoring as many points as possible. It starts off quite slowly with only small groups of weaker enemies appearing, but as you progress, tougher enemies begin to make an appearance, and plenty of them. At the end of each wave there is a boss variation of a monster to defeat who will drop a new, more powerful weapon. Each enemy has a chance of dropping ammunition, upgrade implants, boosters such as mega health, invulnerability, and different armors, just like in the campaign. There's a hell of a lot of fun attempting to beat your score, and each playthrough survival lasts approximately 15 minutes, but that can vary. There's a nice addition to the game which can become quite addictive. Alien Shooter is a lot of fun, but it isn't a game for everyone. Its graphics are quite dated, the sound effects are not the best, and it is repetitive. I feel that it is the fast-paced music that brings the whole game together. If it wasn't for the soundtrack, I don't think the game would have the effect that it does. Nevertheless, it is a classic game that brought back the feeling of the 90s into video games, something that was lacking in the industry at the time. Indeed, in this day and age, where indie games and games of nostalgia are in abundance, Alien Shooter may not have the impact it did back in 2003. As far as mindless action goes, however, you don't get much more mindless and action-packed as this. As a teenager at the time who loved everything 90s to the point I still often played the Commodore Amiga, Alien Shooter scratched that 90s itch that I had. It isn't perfect, but it is pure adrenaline-filled action, and that is exactly what Sigma Team intended. If that sounds like what you're looking for, then Alien Shooter is a worthy purchase. This would not be much of a review of the complete pack if I didn't cover both the expansions too, now would it? Let's move on to the expansions, Fight for Life and the Experiment. Fight for Life continues where the original game left off, and the world is becoming overrun by aliens. To stop them, researchers have begun developing a virus that is capable of destroying the entire alien population. Just as the first prototype of the virus is complete, the facility comes under attack by the aliens, and eventually overrun. Their job is to infiltrate the facility and retrieve the virus before it is destroyed. Fight for Life doesn't add anything that wasn't already in the base game. You get his 5 new levels, a continuation of the story, and a rather obnoxious increase in difficulty. While it is still good old-fashioned Alien Shooter fun, there is nothing more other than that. The increase in difficulty also doesn't do the expansion any favours. It loses the satisfaction of turning tons of enemies into chunky giblets. Enemies take much more punishment than before, particularly the tougher ones. While the Magma minigun still makes things relatively easy up until you get to it, things are more difficult than they need to be. It's an expansion that would be worth playing if you're looking for a bit more of a challenge than what the original gave, and if you simply just want to play more Alien Shooter. Other than that, it isn't really worth playing. Then there is the second and final expansion, the Experiment. It takes place after the events of the first. Researchers are attempting to create a biologically engineered creature that is capable of defeating the aliens as if that was ever going to work. Needless to say, this backfires on them and the creatures turn, killing them, and you are sent in to clean up the mess. Like the first expansion, the Experiment offers 5 new levels, but it also includes 2 new enemies and an endgame boss. The first new enemy is a bat-like creature that can spit acid at you and are very fast moving. The second is a gigantic biologically engineered beast. It is by far the strongest enemy in the entire game aside from the boss. The Experiment still has that same increase in difficulty from the base game. This causes the new big enemy to be ridiculously difficult, where only the most powerful weapons can take them down in a satisfactory time. The biggest problem is that you begin to meet them on the 3rd level. At this point, the most you will have is a rocket launcher or freeze ray, both of which are ineffective. The endgame boss is also ridiculous. It is essentially a bigger version of the new enemy, except it also has guns. The boss fight, particularly in the hard difficulty, turns into more of a case of winning out of luck than it does out of skill. Chances are you'll get sick of dying in hard mode before even getting close to defeating it. There are also a number of cases of unfair enemy placement where the player is put against overwhelming odds that they are always going to lose a life in. On a good note, however, the expansion does add some new environments along with the enemies, but aside from that, it is nothing more than a few more levels of Alien Shooter, and in truth, largely forgettable. As an entire package containing both the original Alien Shooter and its expansions, the complete pack isn't that bad of a deal for its price. It's not a game that would appeal to all, and the expansions are only worth playing for the sake of it. If mindless action and killing tons of aliens seems like something you will enjoy while an adrenaline-filled soundtrack plays, then Alien Shooter may just be the game for you. If you hate repetitiveness, dated graphics and expansions that don't offer much more other than more of the same, then you'll want to give this a miss. A spin-off title was later released when Alien Shooter 2 was in development, called Theseus, Return of the Hero. It is essentially the same thing but offers a new character, new weapons, a few new enemies and environments. Personally, it just felt like something that was developed for the sole purpose of keeping the fans happy during the 4-year waiting for Alien Shooter 2 Vengeance to be released, not to mention using it as a marketing tool. In 2007, the same year Alien Shooter 2 was released, another spin-off was released, except this time with zombies in it. Naturally, it was called Zombie Shooter, Again, it is more the same except with zombies, and Sigma team used the Alien Shooter 2 engine to develop it. Zombie Shooter pretty much felt like nothing more than a quick cash grab while the zombie phenomenon was at its peak, and sure enough it worked. Its bugs and uninspired gameplay and level design really showed its rushed development, but it still satisfies the action cravings when you can look past that. While I genuinely recommend Theseus and Zombie Shooter for those who really enjoy Alien Shooter, there is little more for me to say about them, therefore I won't be making a video on either of them. I would simply be just repeating pretty much everything I've already said, but I will provide a link in the description below for both games if you would like to check them out. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, take care and have fun.